endless days and restful nights. She knows that the lessons aren't learned in paradise. So try one by land or two by sea. It does not matter. She won't confuse the journey for the destination. Oh, 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 I have found my heart and soul. Sight unseen and sweet as don't have to lie down and die. To lay spite upon your enemies, just turn your eyes to the one who loves you most. He will heal your heart and save your soul. Oh, 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 I have found my heart and soul. Sight unseen and sweet as Hi, my name is Destin, and today I'm going to be showing you a song that I recorded entirely through my Otari analog tape machine. In my last video, I showed you an approach where you can use a tape machine as basically an outboard processor to track through the machine straight to your DAW. So I wanted to try recording a whole song this way, and I chose a song that I had originally started working on back in 2018, and it sounded like this. I never put any vocals on it though, and I kind of just forgot about it. But this melody has always really stuck with me, and even though it's a pretty simple song and I didn't really have a great lyrical concept for it, when I thought about a song to try, I thought about this one first because it's got a lot of harmonic energy that I thought would be perfect for capturing with tape. And so I was finally able to get the sound that I was hearing in my head, and today I'm going to show you how I did it. All right, so we've got our Logic session created. I've imported a drum template, and then all the program tracks that I know I'm going to want to keep from the old version of this song. And I'm getting ready to track some drums. I'm going to load up my Neve preset. There it goes. And then I've also got a preset in console for monitoring. Tape machine is loaded. Memory point is set. And we're going to get ready to record. All right, here goes take one. I'm recording the audio out of my computer, so you're going to hear exactly what I hear in my headphones when I track drums. I'm doing another take because I didn't like what I played in the bridge, and plus I felt a little stiff because I'm still warming up, so here goes take 2. Alright, I felt pretty good about that one. It was a little wild at the end, but I think I'm gonna like that, so let's take a listen. Alright, so I'm gonna delete this this track right here. This was the tambourine that you were hearing along with my drums. I just use that to help subdivide the metronome when it's a song like this that doesn't have any vocals recorded yet, and it's kind of a very like steady, straightforward type of feel where I need to be perfectly in time. And so next thing is we need to align these tracks. So these were recorded in from tape, except I have this one right here that was a digital recording of my overheads. So I'm just gonna zoom in, find a transient, and then we're just gonna align to that. Zoom in a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Let's take a listen. All right, those are a little bit ahead of the click. Just gonna do that. Sounds good to me. So I've been having this issue with a couple channels on my machine where a volume will just randomly get cut in half intermittently. And you can see this happened on our bottom snare mic. These should all be the same volume, but obviously they're not. So I'm just gonna gain that up. And unfortunately it does mean we're probably gonna hear more tape hiss, but what else can we do? Let's take a listen. All right, not too bad. I'm listening to make sure our overheads are actually centered because sometimes the repro volumes on this tape machine are unpredictable. So it sounds like we need to pan it just a little bit to the left, just like -3. So typically what I do when I mix drums is I'll start with the overheads, bring that fader up, and that's like kind of my baseline of how I want to mix everything because that's capturing a complete image of the kit. And so it's gonna kind of inform me where my kick and snare and tom close mics need to be relative to the cymbals. So let's take a listen. That sounds pretty nice. Next thing I'm gonna do is experiment with some compression. Not sure if I'm gonna do just across the drum bus or if I'm gonna do it in parallel yet, but I don't typically like a lot of compression on the close mics. I find it just makes things clicky, unless I want that sound, which I usually don't. Usually the tape or just a tape emulator is enough compression on the individual mics. And so I'm gonna try my go-to, or one of my go-tos, the Neve 33609, which just has a really nice ability to glue everything together and kind of pump and move with the source material without sounding like it's crushing it. So just gonna go to just a random preset. We'll use this one and see what we get. Couple other things I did is I added a back EQ over the drum mix because I still just wanted a little more bottom end, and then I wanted to sculpt the top end as well to cut some of the tape hiss in the really high highs, and then boost just a little bit of like 7 to 8K to bring out some of the like the sizzle of the snare drum. And then I've also cut some of the low end on the drum reverb For that, I'm using the Lexicon 224, which I love, on the percussion plate preset with a relatively short decay. Here's what we get. So the next thing I'm going to do is, we have all these programmed tracks from the old recording, and I want to tapeify those just to give it less of a digital hardness, because right now the piano and some of those tambourine type of things are kind of piercing through the mix while the drums are sounding nice and fat and analog. And so this is what we have. So I'm thinking I'm going to send this out of the box as two stems. One will be all the percussion stuff, the other will be the synths and the piano. So we need to disconnect our tape machine ins, which is going to be these. And we're going to connect them to the direct outputs on this mixer so that it can receive line outs from my DAW. So this snake right here is the line outs from my Apollo. So we're going to go into the line ins on the Soundcraft. So now I need to put these tracks in two groups and assign them to the correct outputs. So we're going to find all the drums first, call this percussion, and then we want that to come out of outputs 3 and 4, which correspond to line out 1 and 2. We'll call this synths, and this is going to be 5 and 6. Let's check that these tracks are reaching the console. So if I turn up 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, we can hear everything. So right now I have my monitor controller set to analog in. We're going to switch this to DAW. And what we're hearing right now is still just coming out of Logic. And so I'm going to mute our stereo out. And then we're going to go to console and we can see, yep, there it is. These are our tape returns. All right, the levels are a bit wonky on channels 3 and 4, so let me try to even that out a bit. I'm just adjusting the preamp gain on the console. All right, I'm going to switch this to a different channel. So I switched it to channel 5, which is more reliable, and it seems to be going all right. So now we're going to create new tracks for our tape returns. So percussion will be 9 and 10. And then for synths, we're using channels 3 and 5, which is a little goofy. So I'm going to have to create 2 separate tracks and group them together. And let's make sure that they are set to the correct inputs. Yes. All right, let's go ahead and record it. Okay, took a little trial and error to get the levels right, but I'm now going to rewind to 0. We're gonna move this to 0. There we go. And we're gonna hit record on this machine and on the DAW. And now we wait. Okay, so I got the drum the percussion and synth tracks lined up with the drums and the grid, and here's what they all sound like. I'm back. I took a little break, got some dinner, and now I'm going to do guitars, which are my absolute favorite part of the song. I'm using some interesting effects to create a really signature sound for the main riff, so I'm going to show you what I'm doing. Alright, so I'm going to start with the Hughes & Kettner Amp Classic, which I think is a very underrated amp simulator. I'm going to make another separate video going into more detail about it, but I'm just on its first channel with a fairly clean tone. And then the next thing in the chain is the Bekos Comp IQ Twain, which is a dual compressor pedal. I'm going to turn up the volume on the Hughes & Kettner. I turned it down just to compensate for this not being on. But this compressor is a really important part of my chain. I actually have it after the amp sim instead of before, because I do a few specific things with multiband compression, basically. I'll just show you the setting that I'm using. So it has two bands. The first one I have compressing the low end frequencies. The second one is the high end. And then there's also a low and high sidechain filter, which you can use to cut some of the unnecessary bottom end, as well as hiss and noise up in the top end. And so I love this pedal. I'm also going to make a video about that at some point, but I digress. We'll get back to the important part, which is the wet effects. And for that, I'm going to go backwards through the chain. Let's start with the Big Sky, which is just doing just a medium haul. Nothing too special there. But then on the timeline, I'm using the Vibro Swell preset that came with the unit, but I've tweaked it and I've made a bunch of variations of my own. I really love the sound of this. It's basically using the volume swell and then some pretty heavy modulation to create a very unique delay. And then I have the Line 6 M5 on a Dimension chorus setting, which is just doing a little light chorus and stereo widening. But one of the most important parts of this sound is the Eventide H9, which is actually the very first thing in my chain before the amp. And I'm using the Harmodulator algorithm to do this. So it's adding a second octave and then modulating it with an LFO, and there's also a quarter note delay. This part of that algorithm as well. And so with all of that together, here's what the main riff is going to sound like. And then at some point, I'm also going to go into a heavier kind of shoegazy section. And I think I'm going to try the second channel on this, although I'm tempted to use my Rat pedal, because that's what I used when I originally wrote the song. But let's see what this would sound like. Yeah, that might work. wanted to add a big fuzzy shoegazy guitar to that, so I pulled out my Rat, and I've just got this going pretty much full tilt into the amp, no effects. So let's do it. Alright everybody, it's a new day. I'm going to try to track some vocals. I've brought the mic into the control room because I need to adjust some things while I sing. I'm going to be tracking through compression this time. I've got the distressor patched in after the Neve and before the tape machine. So I'm going to be printing some vocal compression, which I like to do when I'm recording to tape, because if you try to do too much compression after tape, you're going to bring up a lot of the hiss. And vocals are usually the loudest thing in the mix and also one of the most compressed. So we're gonna just fiddle around here and see what it sounds like in the ears, see how hard it's hitting the tape machine. Hey, 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 check, check. You don't have to lie down and die. She comes on the transatlantic train into the night. Okay, we're now entering my least favorite part of the process, tracking vocals. Vocals are always a struggle for me. I don't really consider myself a singer, at least not a great one. Vocals are kind of a melody delivery vehicle for me when I write songs. I'm not really thinking that much about the lyrics. The lyrics are usually kind of an afterthought. And I really like writing melodies, but I don't love singing them. This one's going to be tough because there's a high falsetto part in the chorus, and I think I'm going to record that separately. Well, let's see what happens. She comes on the transatlantic train into the night. She finds... One thing I will often do is EQ the mic just in my ears, because I'm using Sennheiser 280 Pros or whatever they're called, and I find that the 1K is just like an ice pick to my brain when I'm singing, and I can't sing in tune. And so I will usually duck a lot of 1K, boost some of the bottom end, and then a little top end as well. Just for reference, I'll bypass this plugin. She comes on the transatlantic train into the night. And you can hear I enabled it there. So probably sounds really thin and scooped on a good listening environment, but at least in these kind of crappy headphones, it helps. This is what happens when you rewind too far. There's a memory feature on here where you can have it rewind to a certain point so that it doesn't just keep rewinding forever, but I forgot to hit stop because I was distracted, and it did this. So now we've got to reload the machine. So put this around here, across the heads, through the capstan, and then this is the tricky part, getting it to sit up against the take-up reel, and then do this, and then this is usually where I will, whoop, nope, lost it. There we go. So now I'm going through all the takes I just did, choosing the best of each before I import them into Melodyne. So I am just gonna snap them to the grid just a little bit, and then go through and do some manual correction. She comes on the transatlantic train into the night. Now I'll show you the processing I'm doing on the vocals. I've got a noise gate, CLA vocals, which It's a funny thing with plugins. I have much better plugins than this, but I find myself using certain plugins that I've used for a long time just because the interface is really easy to use and they do a thing particularly well. This plugin I use a lot as a vocal finisher because its compressor is just really easy to use whenever you just want more compression after you've already gotten your like color compression from something else, like we did with the distressor. This just allows you to kind of dial in how much extra compression you want, and it's got some nice presets from classic compressors that Chris Lord-Alge uses. And then nice EQ. This roof is just like a top shelf boost. And then again, another example where I have much better reverb plugins than Chromaverb, but I find that its vocal hall and some of the others have a nice tail to it that really nails that like dream pop type of sound. And I mix it with other reverb plugins too, and I've got Valhalla Supermassive, which is technically a multi-delay, but we're using that as like our main ambience, and then doing a stereo delay, good old Waves H delay, with its phase inversion that creates that nice Haas effect type of sound. And so all together we get this. She comes on the transatlantic train into the night. She finds nothing better. All right, so after a couple hours of tweaking, the mix is done. As far as mastering, I felt like I didn't really need to do that much, at least for video purposes. I just used my precision limiter to do a bit of gain reduction, about 3 dB at most, and then I'm using Mastering the Mixes Levels plugin, which is really helpful to check your loudness, and so we're sitting at about -12 LUFS on average. I had tried using Brainworks Digital to do just a little bit of a bass shift and presence shift, but I actually didn't like it. I felt like it didn't really need any EQ changes. And that's it. The song is done. Hope you all enjoyed.